welcome. It is that time of year. Leagues 5 is coming out soon, going to be November 27th, and I want to do some deep dives into the different areas that we're going to be able to pick from, starting with the starter areas, Misthalin and Karamja. You do get these ones for free, and let me tell you right now, they are pretty stacked. So let's take a look at what all we've got access to in here, starting with the shops. Now, there are a lot of shops in Misthalin and Karamja. Most of them are going to be serving you in like the early game, getting that initial setup. There's a lot of stuff like the Champions Guild. We've got Edgeville being able to provide you some initial melee armor. Brimhaven for things like the Karamwans. Xanaris, you got access to some dragon weaponry. You are going to get a couple of quests completed from the get-go. One of them is Lost City, so you will be able to come into Xanaris straight off the bat. Of course, you've also got Barak, which has a lot of the starter shops. I'll give you one guess as to what I was doing before recording this. But with the starter shops, you've got some basic armor here from Borvik for the super early game. You've got the range shop, of course, over here with Low. Then you're going to have the ruin shop as well as a weapon store over here. So Barak early game is going to be really good for you. And then, of course, there's the Tazar shops. Now, there's one before the Fire Cape where you're able to pick up the weapons, the shield, the cape, as well as an uncut onyx. And last year, we got a relic called Fire Sale, which allowed you to get things for free from the shops. Now, this only worked for GP shops, so it didn't work directly with the Tazar shop, but you could go to the ruin shop in Barak, buy up all of the death ruins that you wanted, and then run over to the Tazar, sell it, get that toggle, and be able to buy however much stuff you wanted to. Now, once you have the Fire Cape, you can go into Mole or Wreck, and you can get the Obsidian armor as well. So the Tazar shops in the starter area are probably the best out of all of them, but you can see there's a nice little spread. Also, something to keep in mind, you do have access to the charter ships. So if you want to do that for crafting, you can buy the soda ash and buckets of sand straight from the charter ship shop. Makes it quite easy. I think there was also a couple of tasks related to glass blowing last year. Next up is the skilling options, and this is where I want to say that the starting areas really are quite stacked. You're going to have access to Fossil Island, along with the mainland area and the Isle of Souls. And between all of these things, you just get so many different activities. Hunter especially, you've got things like Puro, you've got the herbivore, bird houses, gray chins on the Isle of Souls. So Hunter, you're already set, and you will be able to get box traps through the general store in Lumbridge. Fishing and cooking, you have things like the Barbarian Village for early on, and then you can unlock the ability to fish Karamwans later. Now, it would be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get if you only have the starting areas, because the quest that you need in order to unlock Karamwan fishing is going to require an agility potion. So bear that in mind, but you are going to get to pick multiple areas, so probably won't end up being that difficult for you, but I guess it does depend what you end up going with. If you are desperate, you can use the Dr. Jekyll random to get yourself an agility pot. I'll put up on screen what herb you need to hold in order for that to happen, in case that's you. And then you've got agility. So a couple of things have happened since the last leagues. The Draenor Agility Course's level requirement has been removed, so we're probably not going to start with any agility levels, but that does mean you can train it up starting in Draenor. You've got the Barak course at level 40, and then you've also got the Brimhaven course, which has been updated, so actually the XP and rewards that you get from Brimhaven are pretty good. You probably don't want to come here until you're at least 40 agility, but considering Leagues has such high XP rates, you can probably get there pretty quick, and there's oftentimes tasks associated with doing things in the Brimhaven agility, like getting a certain number of tickets in a row, so you may end up here anyway. Next, you got the woodcutting options. There are hardwood trees on the Isle of Souls, as well as the Sulasep, maybe I'm saying that right, the mushroom trees on Fossil Island. Plus, going straight into farming, you also have some hardwood tree patches on that as well. There is the seaweed under the water, which you can use. You don't need the diving apparatus to go down there. You will have a limited amount of time, but I don't think it's going to take you that long to go and do a farming run down there. So you do have that as an option. There are a couple other tree patches littered around. Farming's kind of weak in the starting areas, but you do have a few options. Now, while we are still focused in on the Fossil Island area, you also have access to the volcanic mine. Assuming you can get the kudos, but I think you'll be able to get enough kudos in just the starting area in order to get into this place. So this can be good. You can do it for XP. You can also do it for the ore. Plus, you'll have a chance at getting a broken dragon pickaxe. Now, unfortunately, you do need Asgarnia in order to repair it. So if you do get it, you're not able to use it in just the starting area. Now, besides the volcanic mine, you do have access to things like the gem rocks in Shiloh Village. There's a couple of runite rocks littered around the areas as well. So you'll have access to all of the ores that you need. You've got a furnace in Shiloh Village if you want to do that. You can also use the superheat spell if you don't want to go all the way down to Shiloh Village. So you've got pretty much everything you need in terms of mining and smithing in the starting areas. Now for rune crafting, you do have a couple of options. I find this is a little bit on the weaker side in terms of skills that you can train, but you technically can train them in here. You'll have cosmic runes as well as nature runes that you can craft. With the addition of the shortcut in Shiloh Village to get to the nature altar, once you get to the level to make those ruins, it'll be pretty quick. Now, in terms of the low-level ruins to help you get there, you can make water ruins through the Lumbridge Swamp. So, I mean, it's not the worst, but it's also not exactly the most fun to do. Luckily, again, with League's XP rate, I mean, you can probably get up there. It's going to take you 44 rune crafting in order to make nature ruins. So, I don't know, you could definitely do it. You could do it. It's not going to be the end of the world. And once you get there, it's probably going to be all right. Especially, you'll probably want to pick up the gloves from the Karamja achievement diary so that you have a teleport to get you a little bit closer to the shortcut for the nature altar. But again, I guess it really depends on what relics there are available to you. Anyway, enough about rune crafting. Goodness. Thieving options. You do have the citizens of Gielinor to start you off early. You've got a tea stall in Varrock, and then once you get up to it, you can thieve master farmers. I mean, really, master farmers are going to be decent XP all the way up to 99 if you wanted to, just because of the XP multiplier. You can also steal from the gem stall in the Tazar City, as well as pickpocketing the people in the Tazar City once you've got your fire cape. Granted, in the starter areas, you're not going to have ice gloves, but there's probably going to be some sort of relic that helps with like regen or something along those lines. So I don't think it'll really be that much of a problem. And then in terms of the Slayer Masters, you have got Chaldar, Vanaka, and Duradel. Testing my memory on the names a little bit, but you've got some decent Slayer Masters that you can use. One of the nice things about the area restriction is your tasks are going to be limited to the areas that you have access to. So you don't have to worry about like getting blocked as you go through and do Slayer. If you really wanted to, you can get some levels in the starter areas before you unlock the next ones, because there's not a lot of low-level tasks that you're going to have access to in the starter areas. Things like goblins, cows, and whatever the heck's in the Lumbridge Swamp, I guess. So, you know, like, you're able to sort of breeze through those early levels if that's something that interests you. Moving on to the mobs and different activities in the area. There are a lot of good drops kind of littered around at the different creatures in these areas. You've got the ancient wyverns for the wyvern shield. It's like the magic version of a dragonfire shield. It is going to be a little rare, and you're probably not going to want to farm a lot of these drops until you've gone up a couple of relic tiers, because in the past they have tied increased drop rates to how many relics you've gone through or how many areas you've unlocked. You'll have things like the steel and iron dragons in the Brimhaven dungeon if you want to work on getting a rune crossbow early, or maybe some dragon plate legs, lucky DFS. You've got Abbey Demons once you get your Slayer up, so you can get yourself a whip. You've got the Tree Spirit for a Ruin Axe. I've got the Dark Chest here kind of hidden away in the corner. This one is going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to farm, but there is a chest in the Isle of Souls dungeon that you can steal from, and then eventually you'll get a Dark Chest key that you can then use on the like big boy Dark Chest, which has the chance of giving you Dragon Plate legs, Black Dragon leather, the one that's already tanned. And I believe there's also dragon stones on that drop table. So, I mean, really, I don't expect a lot of people to use the dark chest because you're going to be picking other areas. So there's probably going to be easier places to get some of this stuff. But if you're crazy and you end up just locked in the starter areas, you do have access to a lot through the dark chest. You have also got a couple of chromatic dragons if you want the dragon bones. There is no tanner in the starting areas, so it's a little bit of a pain in the butt if you want to try and use that. But early on, if you're trying to get some experience, maybe you want to like mage the blue dragons, you can get some dragon bones for prayer experience and start to save up those hides for when you pick other areas. That can be a good use of your time. You've also got the different Tazar creatures, and while you do have access to the shops, if there ends up being no relic that boosts the shops, or you don't end up picking that relic, you can always kill the different Tazar creatures for all of the same stuff, minus the onyx. So you can get the shields, the weapons, the cape, and then once you get your fire cape, you can go into Mole or Wreck and kill the larger ones for the armor pieces. Now, before I jump into the more complex things, I want to come back up here to Soul Wars. Last year, Soul Wars was crazy good XP. You could use this to raise your combat levels up. You also get access to the Spoils of War, which have a crazy good drop table. Get things like Ruin Bolts out of this, or different gems, even just straight GP out of this. Plus, the Soul Wars cape is the best prayer cape in the game. So all of this stuff together, Soul Wars is probably going to be really good. Now within leagues, we talk about XP rates going up, so that's part of it. The other part is the fact that points in mini games tend to be boosted. Again, this is something that scales the more relics or areas that you have unlocked, but Soul Wars is one of those that's already very fast, so it doesn't have to be boosted by a lot in order to make this good XP an hour. Of course, it's going to get better the farther into the game that you get, but even early on, if it's like 2x or 3x the points, it's going to be really powerful. All right, now on to some of the more complex creatures. You have got Ruin and Adamant dragons in the Lithcrin Vault on Fossil Island. You will have to pick up the Fremnik area in order to get access to these. If you do, you'll get access to the Dragon Crossbow, as well as Dragon Bolt drops. And there's some other things that these dragons can drop as well. Plus, it's just generally good money. And then you have some of the newer additions to the game. So you have the armored zombies that came with the Defender of Varrock quest. And then you have the Tormented Demons and the Elite Black Knights that came with While Gothic Sleeps. Now, the challenge with these is the quests require an absolute ton of areas. And I can't see Jagex wanting to lock this content away. So my guess as to what they're going to do, they will either pick a specific area that you need to unlock that covers maybe like 50% of the quests, and then maybe these will become available, or they're going to tie it into the number of areas that you have unlocked. And really, I'd kind of prefer that they do this. Like, let's say you pick your first area outside of the starters, and then you get access to the Defender of Varrock quest. I think that would be a really cool way of allowing people to get access to this content. And then similarly for the While Gothic Sleeps quest, maybe this is one after you've picked 2 or your final 3rd area, you get access to these. That way more people can access this stuff. It just gives you some more options to play with. I think that'd be really cool. We'll just have to see exactly what they do. So keep an eye on which areas give which quests, because that will likely tell you when you're going to be able to access these 2 pieces of content. Now, one of the big twists that they're doing for this year is empowering bosses. So I've split the bosses out from the kind of like random monsters and activities pieces. That said, I'm going to be really surprised if they give us an empowered boss in the first area. I think they're going to keep the empowered bosses to the areas that you have to choose from, and not necessarily from what you get in the starter area. If they were going to empower a boss, I mean, it's going to have to be... It'd be really funny if they do the like crazy archaeologist empowered. Maybe one of these guys here. I have a hard time believing that they're going to empower like the Desert Treasure 2 boss or the Abyssal Sire. And I really don't think they would do that with Jad or Zook. So my prediction is no empowered bosses in the starter areas, but these are all the bosses available. So if they do end up doing one, I guess we'll have to see which one they go with. To talk a little bit about the different items, the Crazy Archaeologist is good if you want that Ruined Crossbow early. You've got the Fight Caves for the Fire Cape. You've got the Inferno for the Inferno Cape. The Abyssal Sire, I mean, I hate this boss, but it's here. It is easier in leagues. You can get yourself an Abyssal Bludgeon. Early on, you'll be able to fight Bryophyta if you want the Nature Staff. You can also fight Obor if you want that club, 40 attack club. Plus the new addition of Scurious since the last year. This is going to be a really good boss for training your combat stats up. And especially with all of the different league relics, I, I can't imagine that the group world, if they leave it on, is probably not going to survive very long unless they buff the health, because people are going to be like absolutely destroying this boss. But even in solo, I mean, even in the main game, once you get your Ratbane weapons, I mean, you're seeing XP rates of anywhere from like 60k up to maybe 120k an hour on a given combat stat. And when you combine this with the fact that you're gonna have some really strong relics that make your DPS significantly higher, so the rates are going to go up. Plus, there's the XP multipliers, so it's just, I could easily see you getting multiple millions an hour killing this boss with Ratbane weapons. Plus, Scurious drops the spines, which outside of getting your starting Ratbane weapons, you can turn them in for more XP, either combat XP or prayer XP even, and that's going to be boosted by the XP rate multiplier. Plus, you're getting so many more kills an hour because your DPS is crazy. Plus, rare drops are more common, and as long as they include Scurious spines in that, I think you're going to be getting a lot of spines. So if you weren't a fan of Soul Wars, I think you're going to have a good option in Scurious. Now, the last boss in this little section here is the Leviathan. Last year, in order to unlock all of the Desert Treasure 2 bosses, you had to pick the desert. I don't know if they're going to do that this year, but if they do, then the Leviathan is technically in the starter area, but you won't be fighting him early on. Now, he does come with some much needed drops for the area, but we'll circle back to that in a second. So you're in the starter area. What kind of gear can you expect? I've got an early setup on the left and then kind of like a later game setup on the right. Pretty easy to get yourself full ruin. Pretty easy to pick up either like a Dragon Longsword, DDS, get yourself a whatever took to Zobla shield. An obvious shield. You can actually get strength bonus gloves by hunting in Puro. One of the implings will drop you these spiky red Bam braces. You might be able to get spiky blue ones as well. I'd have to double check, but that way you actually have an option for your glove slot. And then of course the fire cape. I think that's going to be pretty easy for most folks, even early on, just because the relics that you have access to are going to be so strong. And then later into the game, you have all of these other options here. You know, you get yourself an Inferno cape. Maybe. You've got yourself the Obsidian armor. You've got a Soul Wars cape if you want the prayer bonus, Fury, all of those abyssal related weapons. And then depending on the areas that you pick, you might have access to some additional gear. Now, the best in slot melee gloves require 2 areas. You need Korend for the Hydra leather, and then you need the Fremnik area to get access to the Lithcrin vault in order to actually make the gloves. Kind of sucks. I'll be surprised if a lot of people end up going for that, but if you're one of them, you will have that as an option. If you pick up Kandarin and the Fremnik area, you can make yourself a dragon plate body and a dragon kite shield, because the ruined dragons drop the lumps, and then you can buy the like secondary piece from the Legends Guild, I want to say, in Kandarin. With the desert, you'd get access to the Leviathan. Something I didn't mention before, they've made it in the past where the Desert Treasure 2 bosses will drop every piece of the Soul Reaper axe. So you don't have to worry about getting multiple Desert Treasure bosses in order to complete that weapon. You just need access to one of them. So if you do end up going to the desert, you'll have access to that as a melee weapon. It is really strong, and it has been, I guess you'd say, buffed. I mean, at the very least, it's been changed since last year. It's still, the stats are still very good. It's just the way that it maintains the stacks for the healing and the special is a little bit different. Plus, depending on what the different area unlocks look like, you may have a zombie axe, you may be able to get the tormented demon drops. So you've got the burning claws, which are going to be a good special weapon. You've got the ember light, which is a good demon bane sword. You might have to pick up Korend in order to make this. You might have to pick up the desert in order to make this as well, depending on how nice they want to be about giving you dark light, arc light, and then being able to make ember light. So this one in particular might be kind of difficult to make. And then the elite Black Knight armor. Something that I find really interesting is the elite Black Knight armor is very similar to Proselyte, and I would love to be able to use this if you don't have access to Asgarnia, which is where Falador is, just so that people have an option for high prayer bonus armor. Of course, you can always pick up monk robes in the starting area. There is the Edgeville Monastery. You'll have access to that, but it would just be really cool to be able to get some use out of this elite Black Knight armor. On the range gear side, early on, you can buy green D-hide out of the shops. Got a U-short bow up there. Late game, you've got all of this available to you technically. I think getting the black D-hide without doing something like clues is going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. And because clues are locked to the regions that you have available to you, it's probably better to just do hard clues and get yourself some blessed d'hide if you're in this situation where this is all you had available to you. Granted, these are your starter areas, so you're gonna have more options. So like, I don't think anybody's really gonna be stuck here, but again, if you're doing something crazy, some sort of like unique account build where you're locking yourself to the starter regions till you complete all of the tasks or something like that, then you do have a decent range setup that you can get access to, plus clues available to you for things like blessed d'hide. In terms of the additional unlocks, you've got the dragon crossbow if you pick Fremnik, along with bolts for it. You've got the ranged ring if you do both the desert and the Fremnik areas, because you have to have access to the Dagonoths in order to get the archer's ring to start with. And then obviously with the Leviathan, it's going to drop the components to make the upgraded range ring here. Tormented demons. I mean, this bow is really good. Even if it's not against demons, it's just a really strong bow that you can use. It really comes down to how you're going to be able to unlock this, whether or not you're going to reasonably get access to this. Plus, you will have access to dragon arrows through implings. It is going to be kind of a pain in the butt, I think, to catch dragon implings, because there's going to be a lot of people hunting them, and there's going to be less worlds available to you because it's leagues. You can still find some, you can still end up getting a decent amount of them, and there may be some relics to help you save ammunition, so you may not need that many. But it won't really matter unless you get access to the tormented bow here, because it's the only bow in this area that you're gonna have access to that can use dragon arrows. Lastly, we've got the mage gear. Not gonna lie, mage gear is real sad in the starter area. You've got the starter stuff. Oh boy, blue wizard robes. Everybody's going to get access to this elemental shield from Slayer Masters, and then, I mean, I guess, you know, you pick up like a fire staff, or maybe the skull staff from Barbarian Village, and even into like the later game, I mean, you can get a Brutu shield, I guess. You could go farm like 2,000 ancient wyverns to get yourself this shield. The staffs all suck. I mean, it's a good thing you can pick other areas, I'll say that. If you get the desert unlocked, you're going to pick up Virtus robes through the Leviathan, and then again, depending on Wild Gothic sleeps, you might be able to pick up a purging staff, which would be a very much needed upgrade. But you know, again, if you're mage, you're picking other areas. You're definitely getting yourself out of the starter areas. Now, in terms of the tasks that you can expect, I've got the breakdown of the number of tasks from last year for both of these areas. They do change a little bit year to year, so it may not be exactly the same, but I think the balancing will be pretty close to this. In terms of the big tasks, you've got things like an Inferno or Jad KC related task. You've got combat achievements. There's the Dazarket Rack challenges and all of the achievements for that. You've got any of the bosses are going to have KC tasks. So you've got like the Sire KC task, probably going to be the worst, but I'm sure you also have things like Ascurius task. Might even have a couple of like Obor, Bryophyta KC tasks, or the combat achievements, anything like that. There also tends to be rare equipment tasks, so you'll have things like equip an Abyssal Whip, equip a Dragon Fire Shield, equip a Scorching Bow from like Tormented Demons, equip a Zombie Axe, things like that. The task list themselves likely won't get released until the leagues actually starts, so it's a little hard to say specifically, but this should hopefully give you some good ideas about what you can expect to be doing here. Now, there are also global tasks, and since I likely won't have another place to talk about it, I just want to make a quick call out so that you know they're there. This is going to be anything that isn't area specific, so things like completing clues, completing a number of Slayer tasks, getting total levels, getting certain level milestones like all levels at 5, all levels at 10, getting your first level 50 skill, first level 60 skill, stuff like that. So you will also have those tasks available to you. And you'll probably be doing a combination of the easy and medium tasks in the starter areas, along with some of those easy and medium tasks in the global task pool as you go through to try and unlock more areas, more relics, and everything like that. And that is all I've got for you in the starting areas. Was there anything that I missed or anything that you think would be especially useful for folks? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be doing more area deep dives like this, as well as covering more Leagues content, and I am going to be streaming Leagues when it drops on the 27th of November. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you there.